Hey, welcome everybody. This is Gary Gonsalves from Broca Consultancy, and we are joined today by Kieran Gilmurray, all the way from Ireland. Thank you, Kieran. I know it's 8 o'clock in the evening there, so I really appreciate your time. We at Broca want to make sure that technology and especially new technology is available to all, no matter the size. And we thought, how about getting an international guest speaker, such as Kiran, who's been across digital transformation for more than 25 years. So I'll let Kiran say a few words about himself. Over to you, Kiran.
Yeah, you're making me feel old there, but it has been 25 years. So my first robot was in the year 2000, which was about 3 to 5 years sooner than all the big names that you now see. And unfortunately, I am not a billionaire by any means. So, like, been in this space for a long, long time. Absolutely love it. Love technology, or more, I love what technology can do for a business when you combine technology with excellent individuals who are really well trained in a culture of innovation. So, can't wait to speak today on digital transformation, all things automation, and hopefully I can add some value and some insight from all those many, many, many years.
Yeah. So thanks, Kiran. I've been following him on LinkedIn for a while, and he's got some really interesting videos. But I said, hey, let's bring him on board and just pick his brain a little bit to see what's happening internationally, what's happening in the intelligent automation space, and also the trends to kind of expect. So I guess my first question to you, because you've been in this industry for such a long time, is there some experience that's kind of sketched in your brain that has been part of your DX journey? And is this something you kind of learn from it that others can take a lesson from?
Yeah, I'd love to come on and say, Gary, yeah, absolute success. And it's the one that I remember most. It's not. It was my very first POV or POC, whatever you call it. I call it proof of value because when you're in automation, the technology works, the AI is there, everything's there to go. So it's not about proving the concept. But it was my very first POV, brought in a consultancy, thought, tick number one, get the help that we didn't, or the knowledge that we didn't have at the time, set it up so they would KT knowledge to us, build out an automation playbook, find the right process. In fact, we found 10 processes so that we had a good process to go. Our top candidate would deliver the right amount of impact in the shortest period of time, i.e., a 12-week, 14-week compressed period, because we were recording this. All eyes were on it. The CFO of the company, it was an international company at the time, was watching. We were videotaping. We hired our own staff, took a while to get, but all good. We did design thinking, we did agile, with the next 9 processes ready to go so that we could kick forward and maintain the momentum of the program. And then it started to go wrong almost immediately. So we ended up removing a lot of the consulting team who were, shall we say, I'll not name them, they were training their staff on our site at a large quantity of
Ooh.
cash. The lead developer, it was broken, walked off on holiday for 2 weeks, which was never good. We discovered that the SME didn't have time to engage with us, having said that they would. The process, unbeknownst to them, in fairness, was being offshored, which we didn't know at the start of the actual process. And things kept going wrong. The good thing is, and there is a good story out of this, everything that that could go wrong did go wrong. So we learned so many lessons, even though at the beginning of the program we planned for things that might fail, because I always plan for success. What's going to go right? Load all the dice, put the things in place that you might expect. COE, agile design thinking, SME, right process, right tech. Did the study, and then prepared for all the things that could go wrong, but we didn't see those. So everything that we did that went wrong went into that run book or that risk profile. But it taught us just a whole lot of valuable lessons that we then extended over the next couple of years. In the next couple of years of that project, there was about over 2 years, about 16, 17 million of saving, about 100 FTs worth of capacity delivered to the business, a whole load of process compliance and E&Os, or errors and emission reductions across the enterprise. So it really, at the time, was a bit disheartening. It was a real knock to the confidence because it was our first ever proof of value using intelligent automation tooling. But I'll never forget the lessons, and the lessons have proved valuable for every organization that I've went to since. So not quite the hero story that maybe I would like to tell, but definitely everything that we learned, we codified and brought it forward. And again, it shows you like things will go wrong in an automation journey. there is a time it takes to get things right and to learn. And it might as well be at the very, very start, as opposed to bang in the middle of your program when every single eye in the business is truly on the automation of the DX transformation.
Well, that's a phenomenal story to share, and so many learnings from all of that. But do you think organizations still face those very same obstacles you were talking about, given there's so much data on what can go right or wrong? So are those obstacles for your automation journey still valid, still present? And I guess what could companies do different, or is experimentation the way to go?
Yeah, I think a lot of the problems still exist and some of them have been solved. So the consultancy end of things, when I started out this journey years ago, it was a bit of the wild, wild west where folks were claiming to understand automation, but they didn't have the experience, typical Gartner hype curve. Now they have the experience, and a lot of the lessons have been really hard earned and hard fought lessons and very expensive lessons, but that box is ticked. I still see, and if you look at some of the research over the last couple of years, I set up a COE because I wanted internal capability that I would then flex by hiring in contractors, bringing in consultants, offshoring, and whatever else.
Mm,
But lots of firms still, for some reason, aren't doing that. So then they try and scale automation by implementing citizen developer programs and then wondering why they're making mistakes, they're duplicating the code, they're not scaling licenses. They don't have the hardware. They have multiple instances of the hardware, 3 or 4 automation tools.
mm,
One of my recent orgs I come into had, you know, 5 out of the top 10 tools, and you're going, how could you possibly do that? But it's a sign that there was a lack of communication in some shape, form, or other. I think businesses underestimate. They want transformation, but do they actually understand what it means? And by what I mean is, okay, what's the bright and shiny picture that you're painting to your staff that says, look, where's this going to go? Thankfully, there's instances now of automation in nearly every vertical, every sector, whatever else. So you can say what the end game looks like. I think the lessons have been learned to communicate really cleanly with your staff because they're worried. You're still seeing newspaper reports about, job losses. And I've come across that in every enterprise I've been in.
mm,
Well, I don't really want to take part because if I do, my job's in trouble or the robots are going to replace the jobs. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't happen. You can replace FT, not the best use of a program by asking people to tell you what to do so you can get rid of them. Never a success. But you still see that mistake been made because people want to believe that this magic tool can all of a sudden digitally transform their organization overnight. But you can't play around the golf with one golf club, no matter how good you are and win a major. And automation's the same. You need multiple tools, but you need the people along with you. You need to train them. You may need to bring in capability. You need to communicate that vision. You need an executive team owning it. And I've seen lots of teams still, the executives go, yeah, we want digital transformation, right? That's something the IT team will do. Well, no, this is a major disruption to the organization. This is
mm,
something the executive team need to call out as one of their top 5 initiatives. Each
mm,
executive should be made to explain it, own it, champion it, fund it, and when it does go wrong, and it will, because if you're not trying enough and experimenting enough in the digital age, you're going to fail full stop. So you might as well try and fail fast, learn the lessons, and move forward. But executives need to own it. They can't delegate it to IT. IT don't have usually the change management, the people skills, or whatever else. And I still see the mistake that HR teams and organizations now need to understand that the world is changing and they need to bring the people strategies up to date with where the organization is going, but they
mm,
also need to inform the organization as to the outcome of digital and be communicating really cleanly with the IT, the executive, the board, and everyone else so that everybody is preparing now for the next 2, 3 years, not going, right, we're suddenly behind the eight ball. We now
yeah,
realize all our competitors have transformed. Now
yeah,
we need to do it. What do we do? That's a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, lots of firms are still doing all of those mad mistakes. The
mm,
markets vary as well. So UK is well established,
mm,
US is well established, but as soon as you see automation moving, as I could see it over the last couple of years, into Nordics, into Germany, starting to work through Turkey,
yeah,
Italy, and whatever else, you could just see that maturity curve wasn't there. But everybody's learning pretty fast now because they
mm,
have to.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's a bit digital Darwinism, Gary, where if you don't digitally transform, a bit like the dinosaurs, you ain't going to be there.
Wow, wow, yeah, that's amazing. I've picked up some key points there. I mean, obviously, people comes first, which I've heard you speak about that before as well. I think some of the common obstacles I hear about or speaking to clients is who's the project sponsor in a way, what is the know-how or resources available, change management, which is what you spoke about, and scalability. Now, does this need to be tackled kind of one by one, or you got to tick all these four boxes, or maybe even more, to board your project first, or you want to make sure you're completely transparent, the people have to come on board, and then tick some of the other boxes? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's a bit, if I use the analogy, playing a game of rugby. You have 1 to 15 players, and they all kind of need to be in position. There needs to be a manager of that team who's telling everybody what to do, and everybody has to play the role, and the tactics have to be right. So you cannot, if I look at the most essential ingredients to make an automation program work, you cannot have a lack of executive support.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people in the business inherently go with where they're going to get rewarded.
Mm,
That's the first thing, or what they're told is important. You cannot have just one tool and hope that you can digitally transform an entire organization using RPA, for example, or robotic process automation alone. You need a COE for me if you truly want to scale it, because you need those standards. You need someone owning it and governing it, and promoting it and championing it and organizing it and driving it forward. You need to give people digital skills, because if you're asking people to transform an organization but you don't teach them how to do it, you're going to get nothing in return. And you can't
mm,
abdicate responsibility to a consultancy, and you
mm,
can't abdicate responsibility to your IT team because they're the wrong teams to do it. Your organization needs to be ready as well, and that's where the change management comes in. If it's very siloed, if everybody's resistant to change and can get away with doing that either passively or aggressively, it doesn't matter whether you have all the executive support or all the tooling or whatever else that you want, it
right.
just isn't going to happen. I
Mm,
think you need the imperative as well. There's very few visionary organizations that look further ahead and say, we're going to invest 15 to 20% of our dollars every single year in doing and testing new things. There's very few do that, but you have to look ahead. You have to constantly, strive to digitize what you're doing, experiment, do things
mm,
differently than competitors, and bring what you want. And your HR team's essential to getting you the right people in, the right culture, the right support, and the right link up to your business strategy
mm,
to allow you to actually succeed in the market. So I do think there's bases that need to be loaded, or positions people need to go into them to have any chance of playing and actually winning the game.
mm.
Any gaps in those, it's a bit like a hole in a dike. The water's going to start to flow in, and then there's going to be another hole and another hole and another hole,
Yeah.
and eventually it's going to break.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Thanks. Um, and that kind of brings to an interesting point is low hanging fruit, right? This concept, I think 2012, 2014, it has continued. Let's look at that low hanging fruit. Let's get that. But the problem with that is it might be missing on the big picture. And to be fair, the RPA platform to 2014 in now in 2021 is very different, right? The
Night
capabilities
and
it
day.
has
Yeah.
built in with the OCR, machine learning. It's an intelligent automation platform that is going to go much massive in the future. So, is the concept of low hanging fruit still valid? Or people have to plan for the big picture, saying this is what we need to do. It doesn't matter whether it's a quick win or not.
Uh, I'm going to say it kind of varies depending on the organization. There's an old phrase that's lasted from the 2000s, which has said, start small, but think big and
Mm,
scale fast. So let's try and dissect that a little bit.
right.
When you're digitally transforming, you are redoing how your organization works and thinks and delivers. And that's more a case of what was a physical organization, chances are, is going to turn into technology business. And it doesn't matter what business we're actually talking about, it
Right.
suddenly becomes bits and bytes as opposed to physical. So you're going to have to think
Mm,
very, very differently and radical compared to what you were doing 10, 5, 3, 15, 20 years ago,
yeah.
depending on the organization that you're in. But you need to learn lessons.
Yeah.
And you can't suddenly just go, right, we'll stop everything today. We'll digitally transform overnight, because that takes, months, years even to redo all your systems. We all have not got the luxury of suddenly stopping and going from night to the following day. You need to earn the money, it needs to pay for itself. You need
Yeah.
to experiment with what will work and what won't work. So therefore you do need to make it to do experiments and do those small things. And the wins, like any project, it doesn't matter whether it's automation, RPA, business change, or whatever else, you
Mm,
kind of need those wins not only to learn lessons but to build faith in the program. And it's one thing I would recommend: find some low hanging fruit, show people what it is, because a lot of people, 60-70% in my head, and some research proves, are quite visual, and you're talking
mm,
about this abstract thing, and if you don't show them what it looks like and what the future is and how it might work and improve, and they go, wow, so that took 2 hours, now it's taking 10 seconds, that's what you meant, yeah, of course I want more of that.
mm, mm,
So then you publicize and advertise that, get people on side, build the champions of it, and then you build what I would describe as an automation production factory where you dish out day in, day out new automations, new components that allow you to transform your organization
mm,
at a rate of knots. And
mm,
that rate of knots is probably just keeping you up to date with what the market's actually doing around you.
mm, mm. Nice. Well put. Um, there's a lot of use cases on big organizations integrating with SAP, Salesforce, you name it. It can integrate with anything, right? But let's come down to a bit of a lower level for the SMBs, right? What does this mean for SMBs? You mentioned about digital dwarfism, and should they be getting onto this journey? What is going to be too soon, too late for them? Any views on that?
Yeah. Yes, it is too late. Tomorrow is too late as well. So
Yeah.
it's a case of, look, I am an absolute advocate of the phrase digital Darwinism, in that there isn't an organization, there isn't a job that isn't digitizing. And someone fixing my heating the other week, and
Mm,
I'm used to, 10 years ago, someone would walk in, they'd whack a radiator, whatever else. The
mm,
chap, in this instance, was a chap, walked in with radar, heat sensors, just checked all the radiators what was flowing, and I've
yeah.
ended up with a digital system. So now I control my heating system. It's only a basic heating
Mm,
system with my iPhone, because there's sensors all over every single valve, all over the house, and that individual who would have used a hammer, whatever, whacked it. Now I was coming in as a digital heating engineer, so it doesn't matter the organization. Every organization is changing, and he is a two-man band, for one of a phrase. There isn't a business that I have seen that hasn't been impacted by digitization. Someone said to me, "What about funerals?" I was thinking,
mm,
well, watch what's happened in COVID. They're now
mm,
beaming funerals in
yeah.
masses to
Yeah.
relatives in Australia and whatever else. You're now booking the funeral online. You're now paying.
Mm,
There isn't a thing that really hasn't been touched by digital. So it doesn't matter the size of the organization. You got to change, and that's
mm,
everything from end to end. You name it. So
mm,
all the principles apply.
mm,
But, and there is a kind of but here, the budget that you might have as a global international, putting in a huge ERP SAP system and backing it up with chatbots and web bots and everything
mm,
else, you
mm.
can afford to build that yourself and bespoke it and do whatever.
Right.
If I'm a 50, 15, 100,000 size firm, I might buy all that services in from a consultancy, or I might buy it in the cloud. And
Mm,
therefore, I'm still getting the same stuff. I'm not just paying people to have them on site or paying for a pile of equipment, but it's the same stuff. So if I'm a plumbing firm, I need a chatbot, FAQ, website, whatever, and all the digital tools.
mm,
If I'm an international banking organization, I need deal rooms and whatever else. It's the same thing. If I'm a local law firm, I now need to be able to deal with you on video, phone. I need to use dictaphones. I need those dictaphones to allow me to actually translate the text into template files that I then just sign, because the fees for law or whatever else, particularly in Europe, aren't necessarily going up, but the competition is,
yeah.
and the speed and the desire for customers to get things out the other door is really ramping up. I call it the Amazon effect.
Mm,
Everything's judged off the back of that, and I want the same experience. So
mm,
for me, look, it doesn't matter the firm, you have to do it. There are commonalities: automation, websites, apps, chatbots, you name it. All
mm,
those things apply, no matter how big or how small. And if you don't deliver those things, particularly in Europe, then folks will want to go to someone else who can talk to them at 2 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the afternoon, allow them to buy on their phone, mobile app, computer, whatever else, when they want to. So I don't think it's a choice anymore for any size of firm anywhere.
yeah. 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 Good. Um, we spoke about, I guess, business size and industry, and it doesn't matter what you are in, you need to
Doesn't.
transform. right? So, are there any specific use cases that you are seeing now with intelligent automation and with the platform getting more robust that what was not possible like 5 6 years ago and it has to be done today because it's become the new norm, so to speak? Is there any specific use cases that come to mind?
I think there's loads. You mentioned a moment ago in 2014, 15, the platforms that when they first come out and you're watching the screen move by itself, it was wow. But very quickly you realized there was a small number of repeatable high volume processes that gave you an ROI. And that
Yeah.
was usually in the back office, financial month end close, HR onboarding, know your client, KYC or whatever else. That's just table stakes now. There's
Mm,
applications that are built that can do that practically out of the box. So nobody gets excited by that. And it makes a difference, but it isn't game changing for an organization.
mm,
The interesting stuff has happened over the last couple of years where you started seeing automation coming into the front office. And that's the bit that tends to get the business excited because that's the bit that tends to impact customers at
mm,
the front end more than anything else. So start to see integrations with IVRs now where you can actually start to do payments and start to key
yeah.
code in,
Mm,
start to use voice interactivity so that
mm,
you can do bank checkups, make instructions, make alterations to setups or whatever else. And that's anything from ordering, as I did tonight, a new broadband line by clicking and pointing a couple of buttons
mm,
instead of having to spend, go through 20 layers of a menu and talk to 15 different people. Easy stuff. You're starting to see as you go through online IVRs or digital IVRs, as you're answering questions using predictive analytics, and it's using lookups to suddenly bring the agent all of the data that they might need from
yeah.
all the disparate systems around the organization so that they paint a visual picture straight away that allows the customer to have answered a certain amount of questions at the front end to remove the white space during the call that's
Mm,
inevitable, where you're doing the validation checks and asking what are you ringing about, and
mm,
then going and hunting for the data, and then using AI and machine learning and artificial intelligence to have those initial questions, work something out, and work out next best action, pick
mm,
up last interaction, make recommendations, a call, work out debt, work out product features, work out credit risk, all on a screen in front of you to allow
mm,
you to deal with that client as if you
mm,
are exceptionally knowledgeable and they've been speaking to you for the last 15 years. So that's really starting to get interesting as well. And then I'm
mm.
starting to see a lot more about chatbots just online in general and not the usual dumb ones where the computer said 5 years ago, no, or else you answered two questions, then says phone the agent. You go, why did I even bother? I
Yeah.
remember ranting at my bank as if it was a
Mm,
person,
mm,
slightly
yeah.
worrying. Now to actually have a conversation where it's very difficult to tell whether it's an actual agent or a person. The other bit and the last bit that I'm seeing, which is the really clever bit,
Mm,
is kind of not technology either. 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, everybody went for this phrase called automation first companies. Well, actually no, automation needs to go in and enable great customer and great employee experiences at the right moment in time. So now organizations are a heck of a lot cleverer as to when they put technology in place and what technology does go in place to create superlative customer and employee experiences. And they've learned that leave the best agent to deal with those key moments in truth where it genuinely involves a person and should always involve a person and train them really well and give them the tooling that they need and only put the technology in where it can make a transformative difference. That's a pleasure now seeing that we now start to value our people again, not just the technology, which was getting prescience for too long in my head.
See, I mean that is gold right there, right? Because a business has to be very, very clear of what they want to deliver, what they are selling, understand the whole user experience of the employee and the customer from start to end, and understand where exactly digital technology needs to fit in. So, yeah, that piece of advice is really gold. Awesome. Yeah. Um, any trends for 2022 in terms
Yeah,
of?
I wrote a set of predictions at the beginning of the year, Gary. And it's always difficult to build predictions because no matter what,
Yeah.
hope you kind of hope that no one will watch them.
Mm,
There's a variety of things that I see technology-wise. You mentioned a moment ago what was an RPA tool is now an RPA platform. So all of a sudden you had RPA, that didn't do the job, you ran out of runway. Then they introduced AI, and that would solve the clickety click and the thinkety think wasn't enough. You needed OCR for the eyes, you needed NLP for the mouth. All that's grown and grown and grown. So
mm,
instead of buying in bits like a jigsaw piece and hoping they fit together from a variety of vendors and understanding your change management costs went through the roof and
mm,
it never worked. Now there's platforms out there that you can truly go to one vendor or be it a cloud or physical or whatever hybrid,
yeah,
and you can get all the services that you need to repeat essentially the core skills that you've got as a person: thinking, seeing, talking, interpreting. So that's really great trend. You've started to see recently not only surface automation, which is what essentially RPA is,
mm,
but you're seeing some of the bigger vendors buying the data mining tools and plugging those in to discover the opportunities, which has always been hard. You're seeing them plugging in obviously AI just comes as default, but you're starting to see them plug in a whole lot of other stuff like API integration as well. So therefore, instead of having what I describe as the proverbial hammer, in other words, I've got RPA and now I'm going to whack every business problem with that.
mm,
Now there's a good degree of maturity that says, to your point a moment ago, what's the business outcomes I want to achieve?
right,
And now I'll start to look at the technology, and that's always should have been the order instead of a couple of years ago trying to solve everything with the RPA hammer. So,
nice,
really exciting to see. You're starting to see a lot more of the vendors moving to cloud. So, if
mm,
you notice, one of the big three the other week now are going, well, actually, we're doing a cloud first strategy. We're moving everything in that direction
that's right,
because they've discovered, like a lot of the accounting firms, Sage, for example, years ago, that that was the way to go. So, great to see that. You're starting to see a lot more folks coming into the market as well with cheaper bots. So one of the things a lot of folks struggle with the bigger vendors is that it's very hard to make a business case if you're looking for a cash return or dollar return out of the program when you're paying X thousands of dollars for a license. And you're
mm,
starting to see some really interesting companies coming in. I'm always reluctant to name too many of them, but I'll give you one in that region, and I've just picked that region. So Lei have come in out of China, got a pile of funding over the last couple of years, and are going in with a really well developed product that's got AI built through the system right from the very beginning at a
right,
really affordable price point. So you're starting to see that trend I mentioned a moment ago about actually it's not about the technology, it's about the business outcomes and creating exceptional
mm,
customer experience and
mm,
exceptional employee experience is
mm,
something that I'm absolutely dying to see. You see the odd time, and this is digital transformation that's widened out a little bit, a lot more around the blockchain space as well, in addition to cloud, in addition to automation. So a lot of stuff and a lot of actual business cases are starting to be built onto that. You see a little bit of a return to web, and this is in Europe in particular, not necessarily app, because people have discovered over the last couple of years, unless I've got an app that actually I'm interacting with all the time, I've forgotten how to do it. So you're starting to see really great, UX experiences. And
mm,
thankfully, then you're starting to see that connection that I mentioned a moment ago between, phone call, agent,
yeah,
physical, digital, and they're
mm,
creating a one office or one customer experience
mm,
so that all of these things are connected together because the technology and the lessons have been learned to date, that connected experiences that are superlative are the
mm,
only thing that actually matters as well. So a lot of those trends are appearing, and thank
mm.
goodness they're really solidifying and maturing. So now we're starting to see a really great return from investments in technology, not just doing technology for technology's sake.
Nice, nice. And I don't know to has we deal with digital adoption platforms as well, which is kind of technology teaching you how to adopt new technology. Is
Hmm.
this something, and it's not picked up much, I guess, in this part of the world, but is this picked up quite well in Europe and America? Or is there a
Video
hesitancy to
technology
digital
teaching.
adoption platforms? Yeah.
Just explain what it is, just so I understand what you
Oh,
mean
it's
by that.
just it's kind of a technology overlay sitting on technology, guiding you what to use. So, for example, if you
Yep,
use Canva, it tells you exactly what to do. Very
yep.
useful for change management rather than a classroom full training session, right? So, is that being picked up quite a lot?
It is. I call it process orchestration. So maybe it's just the terminology, the slight
Sure.
difference. Yeah, what you've got is like after what people discovered is after a while, once you put in the tech,
Mm,
all of a sudden the problem wasn't the tech, it was how the heck do you use this tech and what's the next thing that I need to do. So rather than training thousands and thousands of agents where you're a large organization, you put what I call a wrapper, a process orchestration layer on top. And
mm,
at the point when you were actually making a decision, you could always call for help. The
yeah.
function of that, as you will know, was suddenly, the speed to actually deliver the solution is cut by, weeks, or if not even months. The
Absolutely.
amount of time you need to train on the solution is cut to shreds,
Yeah.
and therefore the skills of the individual that you needed to use that operation is much less, and therefore it's
Mm.
much more affordable to put that technology into place. You're starting to see that, and you're starting to see a lot of orchestration between different technology tools as
Mm.
well, because that has been the challenge. Once you put in a lot of tech, you put RPA over here, AI over there, you
Yeah.
put in a SAP, an ERP system. Now you've gone out of the automation platform, and suddenly it's the connectivity between those devices and the movement of data between them that really starts to be a challenge. So other tools, and you've seen one, I'll name one more, and again, it's
Mm.
not necessarily a recommendation. I think it's a very good product, but Workato is doing great things.
Yeah.
Just suddenly got another couple of 100 million of investment. They're now valued at 5.9 billion compared to a billion there back in January. You're starting to see a lot of that, and that orchestration coming together as well. Really exciting space.
Nice, nice. Um, I guess last two messages. If you have some SMBs, the big companies have the deep pockets; they can experiment. But say you have some SMBs sitting on the fence about automation journeys and where do I start? How do I start? What would be your message for them?
For the love of God, start. Do you know, and I mean that tongue in cheek, but quite seriously as well. There is, in my head, no organization that is not going to be a technology business in the next, I make a prediction of 5 years, but it's probably three. And therefore, tomorrow is too late to start, and yesterday is even later still. You need to start to use the tooling. And it isn't necessarily that you need to have massively deep pockets to do this. So I can go out and buy, or not buy, as a case is, an open source automation platform. So go
Mm.
out and, off the top of my head, and I've written an article around the top 11 open source automation tools. I'll name one again, not a recommendation, but again, look to the article on LinkedIn. You can go out to Robocore tomorrow morning, a SOX based compliant RPA intelligent automation platform that's entirely open source that you can put in and pay a per transaction fee or whatever it is the chaps charge you doing that.
Mm.
So again, you don't need to invest what was, in my case, 4 or 5 years ago, 250,000 to get set up and going by building that cloud infrastructure yourself. You can go out to, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, whatever else, and get a chatbot tomorrow morning and digital translation services, OCR or voice,
Mm.
again, by paying that on a consumptive model. So the technology is no longer the obstacle because it's highly affordable and highly available. You're not doing what I did in 2000, picking up the phone and ordering a computer that arrives 6, 7 weeks later with missing parts.
Yeah.
You could do a lot of this tomorrow morning. The
Mm.
question is, look, what do you do? Well, look at what your customers are doing, look at what your competitors are doing, looking what's interested in adjacent markets where there's products that look kind of similar. And if I were betting the bank at the moment, I'd be going, look, put in a chatbot, number one, to create that 24/7 experience, put in intelligent automation, that's RPA and whatever else, to automate the mundane and make things a lot easier.
Mm.
Put something in your front end that your customers can benefit from, like that smart IVR, that web form, all the stuff that'll help deliver better service to your employees and to your customers, and get started. And once you get started, learn, make sure your HR strategy is built around that. So you're training people to do digital and bringing them on the journey with you. And trust me, there's enough YouTube videos and enough courses and enough online content to
Yeah.
last you 17 lifetimes that you can get started on it. And if you don't know it, just bring in a bit of consulting help, because you'll spend the money now that might appear big. If you try and do it yourself with no experience at DX, you can make some really expensive mistakes that will come back to haunt you. So I
Mm.
would say get going, start learning, put some investment behind this, because if you don't, I go back to that phrase a while ago, digital Darwinism, a bit like the dinosaurs. And I take no joy in this. The world is changing, your industry is changing, your competitors are moving, or people are moving into your sector quicker than you can imagine. If
Mm.
you don't do it, you will be like the dinosaurs and you will disappear. And by this, I don't mean put technology on top of what you're currently doing either. That's a bit like the pharaohs, you're embalming bodies that should have been thrown away many years ago. By
Mm.
that, I mean redesign what you're doing for a digital age at the same time, using amazingly available, affordable technology.
Awesome. That's really good stuff. Thanks, Kiran. Um, Do you want to tell us a little bit about your channels? You've got some going on LinkedIn, you've got some on YouTube. Hi, tell our audience so that they can be in touch with you and follow your work.
Yeah, I was going to say most of my stuff goes on LinkedIn because it's something I have a lot of fun on. And I can't remember what I've got as an audience now. I tend to write it because I really enjoy it and recommend others do the same. So there's about 130, 40 articles and thousands of posts and thousands of comments. So go in. I was only say there's three of me, two of which are me, one old account that shouldn't be there that I can't close, and another chap in Scotland who I actually got to meet. So there's a picture of us somewhere out there, the two Kieran Gilmurrays in the world. So LinkedIn number one. I'm also on YouTube as well, where I put out any of the video interviews that I do. And then on the third Thursday of every month, cunningly named because we do it on the third Thursday of every month, there's a video series from the third Thursday where we interview four experts around the world who understand digital transformation, the real world practitioners. So they're talking about what they know and they're teaching about what they preach on a daily basis, which is always good. And that's on I put that on YouTube, I put that on LinkedIn as well. And if that isn't enough for you, then join in another channel that I work with called the AI Journal, aijourn.com, where we publish again on LinkedIn or publish on a website a ton of open source content around anything to do with emerging technology as well. So it's not lack of material, and I apologize for boring the life out of people from here today. But jokingly, there's amazing audiences that I'm connected into, amazing content that people give up. It's all there if you want it. And I say, if there's something you don't have, or you want a bit of help, or you want to talk, then just connect with me, and I'll do my best to give you my time.
Cool. Thanks, Kiran. I appreciate that. And just like that, we almost at the end of it. 37 minutes has gone by really quickly.
Wow.
Really appreciate all those insights and inputs, Kiran. And thanks for joining us. And again, thanks for taking the time at late evening from Ireland. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Well,
much, everybody. Thanks for listening.
thanks to everyone for listening, and good morning, New Zealand.